Hi everyone, my name is Spencer Nugent, and today I'm just going to be going over a couple quick techniques on how to achieve a couple different surface finishes when rendering and coloring with markers. So I'm using two sets of grays. Sorry you can't really see these very well in the video, but I'm using a series of cool grays from C2 through C7 or 8, and a couple greens as well. Now, to start, I'm just going to illustrate and show how I would kind of shade a matte surface. In each of these examples, I'm assuming that my light source is coming from the upper left side of the drawing, and that's going to dictate how I shade. In general, I like to start light until I get it right, or lightest light till darkest dark. Those are my general rules. So adjusting and using the chisel tip of this Copic sketch pen, I'm going to create a gradation from the furthest point back in my sketch toward the front of the sketch. So here we go. I'm going dark in the back to a little bit lighter in the front. And what I'm going to do, or the reason I'm doing this, is so that I can achieve the illusion of perspective or three-dimensionality in a two-dimensional medium here with markers on a simple sheet of paper. So the next step, I'm taking my C4 marker and again aligning up the chisel tip with my lines here so that I'm careful not to go too far outside the lines. And as I shade down, I am moving to the outer limit of the previous line that I shaded in. Now you'll notice another technique here. I've waited for the marker that I previously applied to kind of dry a little bit, and using the same marker I can go over the same area and achieve a little darker tone. So now you can kind of see what I'm talking about at that corner of the box. Because I went from dark to light, I've set up an area of pretty good contrast, and that really helps things pop, if you will, or communicate three-dimensionality using these markers. So again, I'm going dark to light, going down. So now I've got a C6. I'm just going to gradate down, and you can see where I'm skipping the previous marker application and as best as I can moving to the next unfinished area here. And because this is a matte rendering, I'm going to be careful to kind of fill in everything, if you will. But again, just waited till the markers dried a little bit that was previously applied. Now coming over the same area with the C6, you can kind of see how I'm able to create a deeper, richer tone. Now, besides creating a dynamic look within the drawing, there's actually a reason that I do gradate when I apply marker, and that's because of the broader principle that light never hits the surface perfectly evenly. If this object is within an environment, there's going to be reflected light, artifacting, if you will, other objects that I'm imagining that are surrounding this thing that are going to be interacting with the light and then interacting with the object. In the simplest incarnation, that's going to be the ground. And after adding some line work here, I'll just go into a little bit more detail into what I mean by that. So adding a little bit of line work with the pencil here kind of cleans things up. Just projecting a shadow down as well, just to define this area. Okay, so there's our shadow, pretty defined there. Now on the right I have this plane that I've sketched in, but you can see in my cube here that I have three values. So on the top I've got value 1, on the far left side value 2, which is the side closest to the light, and value 3, my darkest. Now imagine this plane on the right is one side of this cube or some object. Now what's happening is, as light is entering the scene, as illustrated by this red marker, it actually will, for example, hit this ground plane that you see and reflect into this plane or this surface. So this is the reason that I gradate. I'm trying to mimic this phenomenon of light interacting with whatever object is in the scene. So now that we've covered kind of a matte box here, what happens when we go from shiny to super shiny or glossy? And so I'll just show you how the marker application changes. Same principle, I'm going to assume that my light source is coming from the upper left side. So my lightest surface will be on the top, my secondary will be toward the left, and my tertiary toward the right side. I'm doing the same thing, except now that I'm gradating with my C2 marker on the top, I'm taking a few more liberties in how I apply the marker. I'm creating what's representative of highlights or reflections or even artifacts in that upper surface. So you'll see that as I gradate, I'm skipping some areas and leaving those white even. Same thing, I'm going from dark to light with my gradation as I go from the back to the front, or in this case from top to bottom. You can see a little bit better with the C4 marker, kind of the technique that I'm using. Again, just to bump the contrast between these two surfaces, I'm going to apply the marker after the first application is dried, and this will help me increase the contrast with the same marker being used. So those white areas or lighter areas that I'm leaving somewhat unfinished are representative of reflections of objects that may be in the environment or lighting that may be in the environment that's reflecting into the surface. And that's one abstraction that I'm mimicking with my markers. It's not a precise science, but it does get the message across. So the same thing on this right side. Now I'm using my C6 marker, and I'm going to gradate from top to bottom, or dark to light. And again, remember that diagram or drawing with the plane. There's going to be light hitting the surface that this cube is resting on and reflecting into those sides, and so I'm trying to represent that by just skipping a little bit as I go. Now, because this is shiny, there will be some of this reflectivity in the nature of the surfaces, but you don't want to go too overboard. If something gets a little bit more glossy, I'll show you on the right side here how that would look. Now, typically when I do apply marker, I like to clean things up a little bit with pencil, and so I'll do that in the end, so don't worry about these stray marks just yet. So with the glossy surface, what I've done is kind of outlined an area very lightly. It's with the C2 marker, it's a little hard to see, but here towards the front, I've outlined an area which is defined as pure highlight, so it's really shiny. As I gradate down here using my C4 marker, you can see where again I've set up that contrast, taking a lot more liberties in how I define these wider areas or areas that are picking up reflections. And again, once the marker's dried, I can come back over and hit it again. But comparing left to left, the drawing on the left to the drawing on the right, you can see how as this cube becomes more shiny, those reflective areas are even more pronounced. And you can imagine that if you wanted to make this even more shiny, you could do the same thing, make those areas a little bit bigger. So now on the far side with my C6 marker, similar principle, and yes, we've got a nice reflective large area here. I'm going to just define that on the outside and gradate down a little bit. Again, waiting till the marker is a little bit dry to reapply so that I get a nice, richer, deeper tone. In case you're wondering, I am using a marker paper, so there is no bleed through on the pages behind, and it also helps with the blending of the Copic inks. So like I said, just adding a little bit of a pencil line. You could use a Copic pen if you want. I just felt like using a pencil here. It just really helps clean things up. So hopefully this has been somewhat useful in demonstrating how to achieve a few different surface finishes. If you can imagine, if you're doing a product sketch or a robot or any kind of illustration, these are just a couple ways in which you can modify or adjust your marker application to be representative of different surface finishes. Of course, pay attention to contrast, where your lightest lights are and your darkest darks, and that'll help you achieve three-dimensionality in a two-dimensional medium with your surface finishes. Thanks for watching. You can see more of my work at facebook.com/sketchaday or sketchaday.com.